Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Western Nation, brought to you by X-Cancer. Check them out at xcancer.com. This video, this show today is about what can Nebraska learn, whether we like it or not. Alabama and Georgia are the two best teams in the country. I'm not crazy about it, but the facts don't care about your feelings. What can Nebraska learn from Alabama and Georgia, who just played for the national championship? I got three quick things. First off, I want to give a shout out to Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett, a guy who could have easily, if you know anything about his story, there's five-star quarterbacks on that roster. He's a walk-on, buried in the depth chart, stuck it out, could have transferred, could have gone elsewhere, but he stuck it out and he was rewarded for his efforts. So I want to give a shout out to him. Here are three quick things that Nebraska can learn from Alabama and Georgia. All right, first and foremost, getting pressure on the quarterback makes it really hard for the quarterback to throw the ball accurately. I don't know if you knew that, but now you know if you didn't. If you watch the SEC championship game, Kirby Smart's smarter than I am. The Georgia coach, he's a defensive-minded guy, but I hated their defensive game plan. They didn't blitz, they didn't bring pressure, and Bryce Young sliced and diced them all day long. He essentially won the Heisman Trophy, not just that night, what he did all year, but man, he put the seal on it. He put the nail in the coffin. The Heisman Trophy is mine that night in the SEC championship game because Georgia didn't get any pressure on him, and he sliced and diced that entire, what is the best defense in the country? If you watch the national championship game, they brought pressure. They changed. They brought edge pressure. They brought twist blitzes up the middle. They were coming from every which way. And then all of a sudden, they'd show blitz and they'd back off, and that would confuse Bryce Young as well. All of a sudden, a guy who sliced and diced like a surgeon, their defense in the SEC title game, and it's not that Bryce played poorly. They had some drop passes by the Alabama wide receivers. Injuries are a part of the game. Don't want to hear any excuses. But he didn't play anywhere near as well. Okay, he played fine, but man, you could see he was having a much harder time than he was a month ago against that same defense. A month ago in the SEC title game, Bryce Young threw for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and I don't even think his jersey was dirty at all. And I don't think it ever hit the turf. Last night, the national title game, threw for 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, including the game clincher when Georgia returned it for a touchdown. Now, there's more ways. Alabama actually had more sacks on Georgia's quarterback, Stetson Bennett, than Georgia had on Alabama. I could argue that Alabama, because they couldn't run the ball on offense, and Georgia was able to run the ball on them, especially in the second half. Had they not gotten pressure on Georgia's quarterback, that game, they may not have been in the game as long as they were. And it was a close game until the very end. But had they not been able to get pressure on Georgia's quarterback, like Georgia was able to get pressure on their quarterback, Bryce Young, not just with sacks, but with knockdowns, pressures in his face, they may not have been as close as they were, even though Georgia ultimately did win anyways. Number 2, trenches still wins championships. Offense puts butts in the seats. Defense wins games, but the trenches still wins championships. Now, I'm not going to tell you that Georgia's offensive line dominated Alabama's defensive line because Alabama was able to get edge pressure on their quarterback, but Georgia could run the ball. And they ran the ball very well, especially in the second half. Okay, they actually outscored Alabama. Georgia did in the second half 27-9. Okay, they couldn't run the ball hardly at all a month ago when they played in Atlanta for the SEC title. Okay, Georgia had 140 rushing yards. A lot of those came in the fourth quarter. All right, and they averaged just under 5 yards per carry. Bama, on the other hand, had 30 total rushing yards. So not only are they pressuring your quarterback, talking from Bama's perspective, but now your quarterback has to throw because you can't run the ball very well. That makes a hard life for Bama's quarterback. I'm not shedding any tears for him. I'm just telling you why I think Georgia won this game and what we can learn. Okay, the Bulldogs averaged just under 5 yards per carry. And like I said, a lot of that damage came late in the game, which leads me to my third and final key. The mental part of sports is still huge. It will always be huge. It will never, ever not be huge. But in my opinion, it's a lot of times overlooked. Okay. Georgia and Alabama both use sports psychologists with their athletes. Okay. Jack Stark was a part of the Nebraska football program for a long time when they were here winning national championships. If you watch that national title game, I felt like Georgia's defense was all over the place. Running sideline to sideline. They played well. They kept that Georgia team in the game, which is good because I felt like Georgia's offense was tentative until late, especially the second half, late in the second half of the fourth quarter when they finally opened it up. I felt like Georgia's offense they were tentative. They were not as aggressive as their defense was, almost like they had that Alabama mental block after losing to the Crimson Tide for 7 straight ball games, including national title games, multiple SEC title games, at home in the regular season a couple of years ago to Alabama. You know, so to me, it was interesting. The play that changed the game was almost the worst play of the game for Georgia because it led to Alabama's only touchdown. When Stetson Bennett tried to throw it, it was fumbled. The Alabama guy nonchalantly recovered it out of bounds. They got the ball at Georgia's 15 and took it in for a score. They easily could have gone in the tank. So to Georgia's credit, even though they'd been tentative up until then, their response to that, and Stetson Bennett, the quarterback, even said, I'm not going to be remembered for that play. They opened up the playbook, they went right down the field and they scored, and they basically dominated the rest of the game after that. So they may have had an Alabama mental block on offense until then, but once that ball hit the turf and Alabama recovered and took it in for a score, that actually could have been the worst play of the game for Georgia. It turned out to be the best because they dominated the rest of the way because of how they responded mentally. Think back to the Iowa game. We've got the lead. Block punt. Iowa gets a touchdown. Everyone's almost like, here we go again. We've lost, even though we had the lead. We've got to change our mental approach and retrain our mental minds as a Husker football program. Go Big Red. Throw the ball.